Good morning, everyone.
Wow.
How's everyone doing? Wonderful. Mic check is great. Appreciate you guys. Sorry about that. We're just getting used to the format a little bit. The hybrid model, the small room. If you guys remember CISO forum a couple months ago, it was the big room. So that was on me. I was kind of like waiting for a start signal, and everyone's looking at me, and it's kind of like we didn't know who was going where. So blame that on me, guys. But you guys made it here, so it's very much appreciated. Welcome to Canadian Women in Cyber 2023. You guys are here. Congratulations. Let's put hands. Thank you very much. So for our opening panel, we're going to be talking about the evolving role of the CISO. And I am joined by three of probably the most exceptional present-day female leaders in our industry today. I'm going to take a second now to introduce them. So immediately to my left, as I was just clarifying with her before this started, the Vice President and CISO of Varicent, Ms. Maggie Calle. Say hello.
Hello.
To her left, another very well-known person. You guys have probably seen her fireside chats, or you guys have seen her around, Ms. Octavia Howell from Equifax. And finally, our dear esteemed colleague from the Government of Ontario, Ms. Rhonda Bunn. So I'm going to toss this up to you, and this will be kind of for all you guys, but just to start, Rhonda, you can go first with this. How did you work your way up to CISO? And from the beginning of your career, what challenges and barriers did you overcome? And how did you overcome those challenges to get where you are today?
So thank you for that question, and good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here. So I will say part of it is finding that champion that really helped me to get to where I want to be. So someone that believed in me. I had started off as my first role as a CIO. We did a session before on allyship, and I found this ally. It was a gentleman that really came up and validated for me, the things that I deep down knew, but he validated that, I deserved to have a seat at the table. So I think part of the barriers part of it was in my own head. So I was doubting myself, and it was finding this allyship and this person that I could have frank conversations with to say, okay, so, I'm feeling a little overwhelmed by this. And being able to have that, real conversation and be very vulnerable to say, okay, so is this the right way to go? So it was that allyship, it was people supporting me along the way, and then it was taking risks, and I think learning from, we just talked about it this morning, but learning from failure and learning from those roles that you were in that you really did not like. And so my daughter just started her first job, and she goes, I don't really like this. And I'm like, well, that's the best role to start off with. And she went, yeah, it doesn't seem like it. And I went, no. It is because you learn what you don't like, and you see the leaders that you really respect, and you see the qualities of the leaders that you say, well, I didn't like how I felt, so I won't project that on anyone else. So I think it was those things. It was people, I'm thankful for the people that have given me opportunities, and my role right now and what I like to do is to speak to people and coach those that are coming up to give them sort of that pay it forward, because I had a lot of really good opportunities. So I'm super excited that I was able to get this role at the Government of Ontario. I have a really supportive team, and so that also helps when you have really good people working for you. And so I'll just end off with, I got a call from someone that was searching for a job that used to work for me, and he said, the person was amazed when I said to them, I work for someone that said I hire people that are smarter than me because they make me look really good, and I'm not afraid to do that, because, who doesn't want someone smarter working for you? But he said that was really a revelation for this person, and he did get the job. So thank you. So that was sort of part of my journey to get where I am.
That's wonderful. And so I kind of see this as an interesting kind of cross-section, because you are obviously working for a public sector organization at the moment. Octavia, Maggie, how would you guys differentiate kind of your experiences, if there's any at all, when you guys are coming up and making to the role of CISO? Maggie?
Yeah, so good morning, everyone, first. glad to be here. And so yeah, I think for me, I work in different organizations and sectors, and currently I'm working in a tech company, and I can see very different situations as a CISO than I saw in the banking industry and insurance companies, where the key responsibilities are different. One of the key activities in a regulated organization as a bank and insurance is always meeting with regulators, preparing for those, having metrics, reporting, and really adjusting anything that you do to comply with the regulatory asks. In an organization like the one I am right now, you're still doing compliance in terms of getting your certifications, SOC 2 and so on, but I don't really spend a lot of time preparing for regulatory meetings. I don't really, I keep track of all of the compliance frameworks and different GDPR, because we do function in Europe and so on. But I'm not spending as much time actually meeting with the regulators, which was just a big job, especially in an organization that was global, and we had about 20 different regulators to meet with. So that's one of the key aspects. Another aspect is really smaller organizations, startup companies, will really focus on product. We have a product mindset, agile, transformational, and whereas the bigger organizations that I worked at, we were getting into transformative programs to change into that mindset of a startup company where there is no silos between the large departments in the organization, and really it was all about projects with a beginning and end, versus here is all product. You're developing products, so your product security has to be absolutely automated. You're enabling the business, you're solutioning with the business. So in my daily job, I'm consulting with my teams every step of the way about anything that they're doing in order to enable them in terms of getting additional growth in smaller products and things like that. So really the job is very different, where in the larger organizations, we weren't really focused on a lot of product security. It's more about company security, corporate security, and of course services that we had, like the banks obviously have services. But yeah, so a lot of different things that I can contrast in terms of relationship management. My job right now really relies on the fact that I have to be an enabler to the business, increase the sales with meeting with customers. I did have jobs like that in the insurance, but the banks was a little bit different than that, and based on the work that I did closely with the CISOs when I was reporting to them, it was a different structure, really.
That's an interesting kind of take on it, because you're kind of talking about cross-industrial. Octavia, how have you found with your experience making it up to become a CISO, and then in the kind of path that you've taken, because you were talking about you've kind of taken your own unique path, making it up to the top from your corporate experience.
Yeah, no, so first of all, thank you for being here. I appreciate that the room is almost filled. So if you have a seat, when someone comes in, make sure you fill up the room. So my background is I'm a techie at heart, and so I actually graduated from college computer science, mathematics, started in network security. I didn't know that there was a cybersecurity kind of thing. It was like I did real security, which is like the infrastructure security, and actually making sure that we're actually, doing configurations to actually. So I built firewalls, I've run proxies, I've run, ACLs and networks, and so that was kind of my background and foundation. I did it in a what we call a government-sponsored financial organization. Right, and so I didn't work for the government, but we were government sponsored, so we had to actually, do things that the government wanted. And I actually I moved in from the U.S., so it was every time that Barack Obama breathed, I felt we had to actually change something that we were doing. I was like, just stop. So that was kind of interesting. Moved over to an insurance company. Right, so come from a government-sponsored entity that was actually holding up financial in the economy to an insurance company, which is completely different. Security programs are completely different. When I say completely different, I mean almost non-existent. right? And you're actually feeling like you're having to like put things together with tape and, Elmer's glue. And so kind of revamping that program from scratch and what security really should look like in the insurance world, because in insurance is really about, and this is financial insurance, it's really about trying to make sure that you're pushing forward for the next generation, right? And making sure that the assets are secured, but it's not necessarily securing data. And then kind of moving over to an organization where I'm now securing data and and making sure that I'm protecting all the Canadian data is a little different as well, right? And so so went from network security, definitely wanted to move over to be more business facing and more of a business enabler instead of being in the background infrastructure. So made a strategic move to do that. And now really securing data is different because it is about not just securing the internal program, but also securing externally as well. And so I think that's kind of an interesting take, because you have to make sure that you're taking care of the bank's information and the lender's information, but also you have a different lens in making sure the consumer's information is protected as well, which is kind of like you feel like you have 5 heads. But it works because it's fun and it would never be boring. So.
Yeah, and I think it kind of speaks to an important kind of differentiation as a CISO is like, what exactly are you protecting? What are you securing? For myself, the folks that know me here, by the way, I think I might have failed to actually introduce myself. My name is George Al-Koura. My name is George Al-Koura. I'm actually the CISO of Ruby Life. I am a CISO. I have a job, believe it or not. So in my organization, we primarily work in the online dating space. So it's a product-based organization. Our customer demographics are different. The infrastructure is different. The concerns are different. And I think the diversity of your experiences, friends, I believe that would also create differentiation in how you enable your businesses, respectively. And then, Rhonda, for yourself, I kind of want to know, specifically within a public sector organization as a CISO, because I've never experienced that. I think it's a really cool privilege that you've achieved that. How would you say your responsibilities are uniquely different than maybe what we would experience?
So thank you. In the public organization, similar to, to private, there are boards and there are groups that you have to speak with and, get your point across. In the public organization, so in the government, I will go to the minister's office or the premier's office or deputy minister's office, audit committees, and try to relay the same information. So, the good news is you take the same presentation. The bad news is they have a differing level of understanding, so you're not able to get everyone in one room and say, this is the presentation. So it's trying to understand who the audience is and make sure that you don't say something different so that everyone gets the same message, but it's all done dispersely. I think also just, the fact that we take care of, there's 65,000 people in the proper Ontario Public Service. And then there is the broader public sector and the municipal sector where, we're also trying to help them along, but it's, it's this fine line too of not being, the big brother organizations mandating things, but trying to be there to help and to support everyone. So I think that, the communication piece it's a little more of a winding road as opposed to, potentially going to one set of groups, and they're all making decisions and different kind of decisions. I will say, and I could be different, and so we haven't talked about this, but I do go to, and those that work at the OPS will sort of laugh, but I go to a lot of audit committees, and so, like a lot, but maybe too much.
What are you saying without saying it?
I'm saying that there are a lot of times to go there. So it's it's that information, and it's trying to the other part that everyone's going through a shortage. There are shortages across the country, across the world. It's how do you motivate people without money being the number one thing as well, because the OPS. Everyone close your ears that are thinking of taking people, but the OPS may not pay where the others pay, and different constriction or different things that impede, but it's trying to create that culture. So it's getting the right people in to create that amazing culture that keeps people and the exciting work that there is in cybersecurity. So yes, who would have thought, 10 years ago that cybersecurity would be where it is today? Actually, who would have thought before the pandemic? So there are some differences, there are some similarities, but differences and things that I've learned going in is the amazing part is sharing information, although it's really nice to see that private sector is also sharing information, but that part is, so thank you. But that part is something that I think is really nice about the public sector, as well on sharing and being able to accept information and modify, so.
But you guys think so the silo breaking essentially, right? We're talking about silo breaking and actually sharing information and not building corporate empires, which I think happen both in public and commercial organizations. What value would you guys stress for a modern CISO or a future CISO, your ability to create and manage relationships, right? I'm not just talking about with your suppliers, I'm not just talking about if you work in a consulting organization helping on the sales team. I'm talking about within your own company, within your own teams, within, cross-sectional divisions or what have you, everywhere that you have to protect, you have to have an impact. How have you guys managed to break and kind of build those relationships necessary for you to succeed? Maggie, we'll start with you.
I think it's absolutely necessary and a minimum requirement nowadays that we have all of these ecosystems that are all interconnected. All companies, the supply chain is all interconnected, and I think, and I have seen actually how competitors working in the banking industry, that the banks are competitors. However, they do have these forums where they share, right? And cybersecurity, that's a space where they share. They may not share anything else in regards to their strategy and because they're competing. However, when it comes to cybersecurity, that's the place where there was intelligence sharing, forums to develop when we were taking up on the cloud efforts. A lot of work done across the organizations to make sure that we share common frameworks to secure the cloud. And so extremely important, the relationships that we build with them, because if you are able to bring in a lot of that threat intelligence as well, technically speaking, from one company, what they're seeing today, that might be an attack that may happen to the other company the next day. So that information sharing was absolutely critical when we were starting, efforts in getting into the cloud as well, and even more so now that we're all interconnected with open systems for banking industry, and so I think it's extremely important from the technical perspective and information sharing perspective. From relationship building from the people perspective and talent management, I think we all the CISOs can attest to difficulties in getting talent in our organizations. And so you mentioned at some point, right, we start getting into, as a CISO or a manager, a lead in cybersecurity, we start seeing that, we kind of like working with different people, we like our styles, and eventually when you see a leader moving to another organization, very typically they bring a lot of people that they work with, because you need to, trust your team, and of course you make new relationships as well with a new team. But when you are suffering from talent shortage, and if you are going to prepare the similar program in another organization, something that you've done before and you already know the capabilities of someone, so you very likely are gonna bring those. And if you have very good relationships, you're gonna just bring them along with you. So extremely important, especially in this environment where we're just, very, it's very hard to just get very good talent that can help you with that. So the other part too that I think is important for CISOs and cybersecurity organizations in general is, as the talent pipeline is very, it's pretty much sometimes dry, building those relationships with colleges and universities where we can bring new talent coming up, and it's extremely important. So I have worked in organizations where we've done that, and it's extremely useful. I myself have hired people from tons of people from straight from the programs that we know they teach the skills that are required for the different roles in my organization, and they have been very successful, right? People that came in as fresh grads, they eventually, work their way up across different domains of the information security, and they're very senior now, right? That I can see everyone has been successful. So extremely important to partner with learning organizations, community colleges, and universities to bring that talent, and that's all about the relationship that you're building in your community.
I think that kind of speaks on a good point. And actually, sorry, Octavia, you just completed recently, when you took on this new position, a big move. You uprooted yourself, you came up here. The value of relationships, I think, not just in a workplace, but just in life, because having to kind of restart fresh in Toronto. How would you place that relationship skill set? How important is that for your success as a CISO and even as a modern business leader?
So before I answer that question, the back is starting to get really, really congested. So if you have a seat next to you, could you please just raise your hand so that people know that they can come sit? Awesome, thank you so much. I appreciate you all for participating. But so yes, I did just recently move from Atlanta, Georgia to Toronto in last year during the largest snowstorm. So that was very interesting. So a funny thing, so when I was preparing to move to Canada, they said, Canada's great, it's amazing. The only bad thing about Canada is the weather. And I was like, oh, no worries. Let Canada give me its worst, get that out the way, because it's all up from there. And I didn't realize that it was really going to give me its worst the day that I came in and had to turn around. But yes, I think relationships are really important. So in my role, even before I actually took on the CISO role for Equifax Canada, the previous role was all really about building those relationships and building ties. In the US, I am very connected. People know me. I can walk down the street. My son hates it because he's an introvert and he hates when people stop me. But he was like, who knew that so many people follow cybersecurity?
Does he just think his mom's a nerd?
So I tell him that I'm a nerd because he's a nerd as well, and so it's fine. I mean, this is if I wasn't a nerd, I wouldn't be making six figures, and those who are not nerds don't make six figures, so we're good.
We're good. Let's have to ask that.
So no, it's interesting because when I was actually in the US and I was a business information security officer, and really it was about trying to understand how I can actually help move business forward, right? Move blockers out of the way, make sure that when we're dealing with third parties, that they understand their importance and their need to protect the data that we entrust to them, as well as ensuring that our customers understand that the data that we license to them, you also have to protect that as well. And just because you get the data doesn't mean that you can do whatever you want to do with the data, right? And so I think that's the biggest thing right now. And so how do you do that? 20 years ago, security people was in a corner by themselves, only working with technology, and the only people who knew security was technology. Now we've kind of come out of the corner, right? And we have to deal with the sales team, which, oh my God, the sales team, and we have to deal with the product owners and the product managers and strategy and how we're actually going to move.
Have you had to deal with developers yet?
Well, we always deal with developers. We've always dealt with developers. Well, developers are my friends. They are the best people.
You don't beat them hard enough. That's the problem. You gotta get your developers in line.
I thought we were talking about building relationships, not trying to steer them away. You don't build relationships by cracking down on them. You actually enable them by helping them to be better developers. So, I mean, honestly, when you're thinking about building those relationships, I say it in jest, but I'm very serious. You have to make sure that you're meeting people where they are, right? We know that we're putting the policies that we put in place sometimes are very hard. I remember when I initially got to Equifax, and I was working with our United States Information Solutions team, and we were building out our cloud strategies, so how we're actually going to move all of the data to the cloud. And we had this long process, like literally when I asked them to show me the state map, it was like, you couldn't even zoom in and see all of the pieces. And I was just like, and they're like, oh, well, the technology team, they don't want to do this, they're lazy, they just want to do whatever they want to do. And when I ran through it, I was like, I wouldn't do this. This is stupid. That's the dumbest thing ever. Like, how can you build relationships by making it harder? Right? And so as security professionals and as a CISO, like, I have to make sure that I'm removing things that don't make sense. Just because it made sense 5 years ago doesn't necessarily mean it makes sense this year. It made sense last year because we didn't have certain things in place. So we have to make sure that we actually adjust. And so I start everything with the why. So my relationship building is understanding the purpose and the why, and also ensuring that my stakeholders also understand the purpose and the why. And if they understand the purpose and the why, they may be able to develop those developers, may be able to develop something that solves that problem, so it gets them out of doing that extra work.
I mean, like, as long as you just stop building stuff out of legacy code, but that's probably a technical track conversation. But
That is a training conversation, because we should not be building code using C++ anymore. I'm just saying.
Oh, thank goodness. But so you kind of hit on a bunch of good points there, and I think a big one, though, in the way that you handle your business, right? You maintain a degree of like authenticity, and you're true to yourself. And I kind of want to highlight that point, and I want to start with Rhonda on this question, because you brought it up last night. Rhonda, a lot of people, typically, like, you know, a lot of women in the industry, a lot of people who are visible minorities, or folks who are recently landed immigrants who are trying to find their feet in Canada, you know, folks often have to deal with imposter syndrome, because you might land that really sweet job, and you're in that really cool organization, but maybe in the back of your mind, you might feel on some levels you don't deserve to be there. Or you like look at other people who are super successful, whether it's on LinkedIn or at conferences, and you're like, oh my God, that person's like way up there. Who the hell am I? What's going on? How did you get through that? And what would you kind of give as like advice for people to find it within themselves to be able to get over their own imposter syndrome and step into the confidence of their own identities?
Yeah, so that's a great question, and yeah, I loved what you actually had to say about relationships, so totally aligned there. You know, it's very hard to imposter someone or not be your true self all the time. And, you know, a couple things come out of that. For one, it's a full-time job in trying to do that. And we all have full-time jobs, and cybersecurity doesn't have any room for any more time. So, you know, there's a couple of things. I took a Six Sigma training course when I was at Maple Leaf Foods. And one thing that they had talked about was and I can't remember the name of the fire, but there was a fire, and a chief was just put in place and didn't have the trust or didn't know any of their staff. And they went into the fire and they said, you know, lie down here, even though the fire was coming at them. And a lot of people didn't have the trust, and they left. And unfortunately, they did not survive. And it was about that trust of that leader. And so with cybersecurity, you know, similar, when things go, you know, something happens and everyone has to be heads down, it's that you have to be the same person you were before, and you have to have that trust. And so people have to know that when you say this crazy thing, that it's coming from a place of, you know, goodness, and that people are going to trust you, even if it sounds like a crazy solution to get, you know, out on the other side. And so I you know, there's a couple of things. So that for me was a big aha moment of, wow, you know what, I can't be anyone else, and it's very hard to try to be someone else, but you know, who I am, I have to trust in myself. And so like I said at the beginning, you know, I had to get over some of those things in my head to say, well, when I get up and present, if I don't present like this person, I'm not really good at presenting. And it was, you know, everyone's different, and I need to find my niche. And again, you know, I was really lucky along my way to have people that validated that and people that supported that. And, you know, when you make mistakes, actually, was at one company that failure was actually celebrated. And I thought, wow, what a really cool thing to celebrate failure, because you learn the most from when you fail. And so it taught me, you know, when I tried to be someone else, and when I tried to, you know, say something in someone else's words, I say, I sound like Porky Pig. Like I just, it's, you're spewing out the words and it's not coming. And it happened to me when I first day as the CIO at City of Kitchener. My boss was amazing, just a great speaker, and he said, this is what you should say when you meet your staff. And he gave me these things, so I'm writing it down going, wow, that sounds amazing. And no joke, I went in front of everyone and I'm talking and it's like blah, blah. And I thought, oh my gosh, wow, what a great first impression. So I thought, okay, so I need to recover from this. And so, we went for lunch that day and I said, okay, guys, I want to start and tell you who I am from my perspective. And I said, I think I tried to, mimic what Dan said because he's brilliant at speaking, but it's not me. This is who I am. And, they really were receptive to that. So I think, it was that positive reinforcement on being yourself, but it's very difficult not to be yourself and to try to be someone else. And like the other part is that trust. So when everything goes, awry, being yourself, people know what to expect from you as opposed to someone else showing up at the 11th hour. So,
Maggie, how have you dealt with and gotten through imposter syndrome in your career?
Yeah, I think Rhonda summed it up pretty much, how I think anybody would feel and how I would feel having to, pretending to be someone else. So I can really think about times when I had to, not be authentic and be somebody else, because it will take a lot of effort, right? Energy and effort and perhaps that's something that by being myself and authentic probably reduce the number of opportunities available to me, right? But I'm happy with the outcome anyway, because I just don't think it's a good time investment to try and be someone that you're not. It will just be exhausting. And so I think leaders need to understand, and one of the lessons learned here is that we sort of need to accept people for who they are, because I think the value that I bring to the table is the uniqueness of being myself and the perspective that comes with it, right? And that's the value that we all bring into the room and into work by being ourselves, presenting ourselves as who we are, and that perspective that comes with that, it's extremely valuable to get different diverse thinking, innovation, and so yeah, I think that's my take in it. When you get Maggie, you kind of get Maggie.
So that's kind of the important thing, so I have this little show that I do with my friend George. Some of you might have heard it. He's a sales guy. We try to talk about the CISO sales divide, and the biggest thing we've come to, both on whether you're working on the sales side or whether you're a practitioner, the authenticity of self. Right? A CISO doesn't want to deal with an inauthentic salesperson. A salesperson doesn't want to deal with a CISO or an executive that's going to waste their time for months on end and not buy anything, right? I think authenticity is something that is going to be the biggest differentiator in our industry. And that's kind of like where I want to go with Octavia, because I know we had talked about this before, and you've done a really good job of being yourself to the max, right? It's true. I mean, when Octavia's in the room, Octavia's in the room, and that's a pretty darn thing, pretty cool thing about her. How important is it to you, Octavia, to be your authentic self, and at what point in your career did that mindset change? And do you just lean into being you, and I'm gonna be you, no apologies, no shit taken?
Yeah. So before I answer that, I do want to kind of back on the imposter syndrome, because I want to be clear, imposter syndrome is the thought that you're not good enough. It's not that you're trying to be someone else, but it's the thought that you're not good enough, right? And I would say if you're in the room, if you actually have that role, you have that role because you are actually in a space and you have the knowledge to actually do what that role requires. And so I would say, I personally don't have imposter syndrome. I think imposter syndrome is something that's made up by stupid people who think that they want to put other people down. So dumb people who are in power, they make things difficult for people who are smart, so that those smart people don't take their jobs. So we just have to make sure that.
I'm happy you said it, because I didn't have to, so. That's great.
So I would just say, like, own the stuff own your stuff, right? There are people who are better than I am at certain things. I'm gonna let them have that. Matter of fact, if you want that thing and you want me to do the thing, let me go get someone who's better at it, and I'm gonna show them. But that person who I brought, when they ask to do something and I'm good, I expect you to return the favor, right? So that's why, like, I don't deal with that. About me just being authentic, like, I don't know when it snapped. Actually, I do. I think when I was about to turn 30, like, I had this thing because I was the youngest corporate vice president in my company at the time. And I remember, it was before video conferencing, so it's like you get on the phone, you talk on the phone with someone, and they don't know what you look like, right? They know you're a woman, they know your voice, but they have no idea what you look like. Exactly. And so when people would come visit the office, because we had an office in Atlanta, we had an office in New York, we had an office in Boston. And so when they would come visit and they would meet me with my braids all the way down to my to the back, and this young, 20-something-year-old person who is in a room full of 40 and 50-year-olds, right? And all of a sudden, the thing that we were working on, all of a sudden they don't want to do it anymore. Right? And I'm like, well, what happened? Like, what did I do? And it's like and I realized all they did is meet me, right? And that was not, and so I got to a point where I was like, you know what? I'm about to turn 30. 30 is I'm grown now. I am not a child anymore. Like, it's like, this is it. No one's going to tell me what to do. No one's going to call me a little girl. I'm fully grown at this point. And so I just changed it. I just said I didn't, you get me and you get the full authentic me. And if I don't like something, then I'm going to tell you that doesn't make sense.
I know your face, it's like your eyes can cut ice sometimes. I've seen the look on your face. I'm like, I don't want to be. I want to be on the other side.
I don't have a poker face. I have a spades face.
Yeah.
Right. And so, read my eyes. If you're my partner, you already know what we're doing. And sometimes it is, you have to, I still have self-awareness. I do realize the presence that I bring. I try to make space and room for everyone else as well, because I do know I have a dominating personality. But at the same time, someone's going to see that. Some young girl's going to see that, and they're going to be like, oh my gosh, I have the same thing, but I don't have to hide myself. I can actually still shine and still be successful. So I just continue to be me. And I, like everyone else that's all around me, continue to be yourself, because there's some girl that's looking at you that has your same personality, that if you shrink, or if you don't show up, or if you don't show who you are, then they're not going to be able to see themselves in you.
And I think that's kind of like, to bring it back to like the whole point of this panel, it's kind of like the evolving role of the CISO, right? So like, realistically, what does it mean, in your opinion, not just today, but 5-10 years from now? So the folks who would be at this conference who are, at the junior or mid-level point in their career, 5-10 years, you'd hope they're the ones that are going to become the CISOs, and that we've all, or not, but we need somebody to replace us, because I want to retire eventually. So like, I hope they do.
In 5 years? I need your financial plan.
If you were planning on working past 50, that's all I'm saying.
Oh, I'm not planning on working past 50.
That's all I'm saying, right? We're on the same page. But I do believe that we have to kind of figure out, and I'd love to get all you guys' opinion, like more of an open discussion. How do we then create the culture of authenticity and really humanizing the job? Because I think at a certain point, we have to get away from being a cost center. If you're a cost center organization that looks at security, it's just like, what's the return on investment? I'm not gonna let you buy this toy. If any of you have worked in security, you've all dealt with that from your boards, I'm sure. How do we go from that kind of P&L mindset to let's humanize the job, let's humanize this career so that we can actually attract more people from more diverse backgrounds?
If I can start,
Sure.
I would say, honestly, the job is a hard job, right? There are moments that you have to be serious. There are moments that you have to actually, like, you can be seriously joking, but sometimes it's like you have to read the room. Sometimes people aren't going to receive that very well. And so you have to still be very professional. You have to know your stuff. I think I said earlier, you should be confident because you're competent. Competency means that you actually do your homework, you're actually studying, you're actually like knowing exactly what you're presenting, knowing how to do a return on investment, knowing risk, understanding how that actually matters to the business. And so I think, it's kind of like, your question is kind of like telling a bunch of people who like going surfing all the time to like be accountants, right? If they don't like numbers, then they may not be the best fit. But at the same time, if you like the industry, if you like actually protecting and like risk and like kind of crunching and dealing with people and building relationships, this is the role for you, right? And it's evolved from, again, being in the corner to really kind of opening up, and there's a space for anyone. And so, you really have to look at the holistic realm of cybersecurity. We're getting a 1 minute flag.
1 minute.
Oh, 1 minute flag. Okay. I was hoping for a 5 minute flag because I want to ask for like any
You missed
Q&A. We'll just give people a chance. Does anyone have any questions they'd like to give us in like the 60 seconds or less? You have a chance. Go ahead. Hold on a sec. A mic's coming your way. No. Up front. Thanks, friend.
Do we ever stop having to prove ourselves to a room full of male peers?
You only proving yourself to yourself.
Yeah.
There is no other male that has ever,
Yeah.
no one has ever told me, or like they meet you first and they're like, oh, she can't do that. Like they don't know until you open your mouth. So literally you are, imposter syndrome, all that stuff is in your head. You haven't approved yourself to someone, that's all in your head. That's what you tell yourself.
And
An example of, like, before they meeting you in person, everything was okay. They just saw you. I got that same thing.
That
I'm
person
a
also
woman.
got fired.
She's a woman, so now we are rethinking, right? Like, I always thought it was because I was too young, or because I was a woman, and etc. And I thought, like, when I get more mature, this thing will change. And I don't see a change.
you know what, so part of that too, like I cut my hair short, or I dyed it darker to try to look more mature, and then I got to the point where someone said to me, you accept what people say, so you actually either have to accept it and bring it in, or you have to deny it and say, you know what, it's not that you're not self-aware and taking feedback, but what they're doing is on them, it's their problem as opposed to yours, so.
Absolutely.
Any thoughts?
Yeah, I think I couldn't agree more. Like, I think we should always be open to feedback, but always with a grain of salt, right? And there's always opportunities for improvement. Personally, I think I don't internalize too much or overthink on other people's comments, but if there is something that I do agree that needs, it's an opportunity for improvement, then I'll take action, right? Because that's the only way that we can keep getting better.
So here's a cool exercise because we're going to close up. In the size of a tweet, can you give some closing advice to everyone to also say goodbye? So what would be your closing advice to the room that they could put in the size of a tweet? Maggie, go ahead.
Never give up.
Rhonda, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, be yourself, you are awesome.
Octavia?
Connect on LinkedIn and make networking.
Thank you everyone for attending our panel.